Several years ago, I moved into a new apartment. This one was nicer than the previous apartment that I had been living in, and I was excited to live there. I got a one-bedroom place on the first floor of the building in an apartment complex that had a few different buildings. So after moving in, within probably 2 weeks of living there, I remember that I got this strange text message. I did not know who it was from because I didn't recognize the number. The text just said hi, and I ignored it, assuming it to be a wrong number or something. Several days later though, I got another text. It was from the same number, but it said, "I can see you." I found this to be more suspicious now. I wondered if this was actually a wrong number or maybe something else, but quite possibly it was just a prank from a random number. I texted back asking who it was. They did not respond though. I got up and went over to my window and closed the blinds. It was nighttime, and I had a very large window that led out to a patio. Next to that was a small courtyard that connected to the other apartment building. I wondered if somebody could in fact see me, but I didn't really think so. I didn't get any more texts for the rest of that night. Either the next night or the one after, I actually got a call though. When I saw the number was calling me, I hesitated before answering, but my curiosity got the better of me. Even though I was really nervous, I picked up. I said hello, and there was a pause before I heard a whisper of a man on the other end. He just said that he knew where I lived and that I was home. I didn't know what to make of this. I tried asking him who it was, but then he hung up on me. By now, I was really creeped out about this whole situation. After that call though, for a few days, there was nothing. Everything was fine and there were no texts or calls. I was starting to forget about it until late at night when there was a random knock at my door. I was in the other room and instantly thought that the knocking might be connected to the strange texts and stuff. I didn't want to answer it, so I didn't. The knocking continued on and off for about a minute or two. When it finally stopped, after a couple of minutes, I got up and checked the door as well as the hallway. There was nobody there anymore. I was really nervous, but I didn't go to the police or anything. For the next few days, nothing happened, and things were actually fine for a few weeks after that. It had all stopped, and I was really happy about it, but I didn't know why. Then I ended up finding out something crazy. There was this guy who lived in the apartment complex, and he had been arrested for stalking the woman who lived in the next building from mine. When I heard the details of the case, it sounded very similar to me. He had texted and called her repeatedly before somehow entering her apartment one night. She managed to escape and call police, leading to the guy being caught. When I heard this, I realized why it had stopped, because the man was caught. I'm really glad that they got him when they did.
I'm not proud of any of this. I have a big family and we're super close. When I was in high school, my aunt was dating this guy who seemed really wealthy, but no one really knew what he did. I think anyone could have guessed though. I asked my aunt to introduce me to her boyfriend and we talked about how I could work for him. Without going into too much detail, he let me work for him. I sold to some people I knew. I went to high school in an area where there was a lot of drugs. I knew a few boys who claimed they were already using this stuff. I offered to sell it to them, and surprisingly, they had really big orders for me. I didn't ask any questions. I just went along with it. I was making about $3,000 a month from this. Not enough to retire or anything, but definitely more than most 17-year-olds made. I never made a point to flaunt my money or anything. I think I kept it well hidden. At least I thought I did. What bothers me is that there's no way of knowing. One Saturday morning, I walked over to my friend's house for a birthday party. Not a wild one or anything, just a cute little breakfast. On my way home, this guy that I'd never seen before pulled over and got out of the car. He was well dressed and a bit older. When he got out of his car, I thought he was a cop. He was acting like a cop. I was ready to surrender because I didn't think I could make an escape, but then he pulled out a switchblade and said to give him my purse. He then said something like, "Don't act dumb, girl. I know you have money. It's okay, we can make this easy if you just give me your purse. Again, I can't really explain this, but that just felt like such a cop-like thing to say. I don't know if you've ever been in that kind of situation. I really hope you haven't. But you kind of just freeze when someone surprises you like that. It's not really fear. Your body just doesn't know how to react. I almost think my body didn't let me get too scared, because if it did, then I'd have a heart attack. First, I think I felt relieved that he wasn't actually a cop. Thank goodness for that. Second, when he said it was okay and that we could make it easy, it actually calmed me down a bit. So I just managed to say, "Okay, can I just give you my cash? My purse has my phone and pictures and other stuff." He said okay to that. I opened my purse and took out all the cash. I had about $200. He watched me closely as I did it. He took the money, said something like, "If you tell anyone, I'll find out," and then he left. I felt really calm the rest of the walk home. The next morning, it hit me that I had been mugged. That's when the panic set in. I had started shaking and crying. Even as I'm writing the story now, it still gives me chills. I had never seen that guy before. When he said, "I know you have money," I don't know if he meant he knew about my dealing or if he was just trying to scare me. Honestly, I'm really glad that this all happened, because it made me get out of that business at the right time. Things were only going to get even more dangerous from there. It's still scary thinking about it, but that guy saved me without even realizing it. I told my aunt's boyfriend what happened and that I was just too scared to keep doing this trade anymore. He told me to send all of my customers to him instead. I did, and that was the end of it for me. It's been almost 10 years now, and I haven't looked back since.
This happened a few hours ago, and I'm not scared anymore, just angry my pizza got stolen. In my town, there's a story that a guy has moved into the deep woods close to our town. I never believed it, as I go for night drives occasionally and never saw him or anything resembling a man that lives in the woods. Anyway, tonight I decided to go for a drive and drove past a pizza place, and being hungry, I decided to get a pizza before I went home. In my head, I had a plan to eat pizza and play some Minecraft, as I'm in my 2-week Minecraft phase at the moment. I paid for my pizza and started walking to my car with the pizza in one hand and my phone in the other, messaging my friend if he wants to play some Minecraft when I get home. I look up from my phone to cross the road to the car park, and I see something under my car. It looks like a shadow or something dark. I put my phone in my pocket and pull out my keys. Unlock the car to scare off anything close to the car, and I was thinking it may be a cat or a dog just hanging around my car. But when I unlock the car, nothing happens. No cat running away, and nothing running away. The shadow looked like it was cast from the driver's side, so I was going to have to look at what it was, whether I wanted to or not, to get in. I put my keys away and pull out my phone again and turn the flashlight on to see better in the dark. As I turn towards the driver's side of my car, I see him. A dirty, naked guy with big eyes staring right at me. He was crouched down, trying to hide from me. Now, I don't usually get scared of anything, but this guy terrified me. It looked like he rolled around in mud and it dried out on his skin, and his eyes looked creepy, bloodshot and kind of bulging out of his head. And of course, he was naked. I get startled and jump backwards out of instinct, dropping my pizza in the process. It falls out of its box and onto the floor. I start moving back slowly and shout at him to get out of my car. He looks up at me, then at the pizza, then back at me. He tilts his head to one side and then jumps towards the pizza like a dog, grabs it and starts running away down the road, and I assume he ran all the way to those woods. I wouldn't know where he went, as I didn't feel like following him. I lock my car and run back to the pizza place to stay there for a bit. The workers obviously don't believe me when I tell them what had just happened, but I know what I saw. And once the fear subsides after a while, I realize that this guy just stole my pizza. Angry as I was looking forward to it, I decided to get another one and run to my car this time. I get in, put the pizza on the passenger seat, and go home. Once I got home, I locked all my doors and windows, and I even locked my bedroom doors. I feel a little scared still, and I think I'll be playing Minecraft until the sun comes up.
One night I had gone to the Walgreens by my house to pick up some cigarettes and random snacks. The line was longer than usual because it was a Saturday night and people were buying alcohol. It was about 3 people back from the register, and out of the corner of my eye I had saw a gigantic figure. Out of curiosity I looked back and I saw a guy with bright orange and red hair who's at least 7 feet tall. I didn't want the guy to think I was just gawking at his height, so I just mumbled, "Cool Nirvana shirt," and then didn't look back for the rest of my wait. After I checked out at the register, I went to my car. I lit a cigarette and then sent a couple of texts, just to keep from texting and driving. I probably sat in my car for around 3 to 5 minutes, not too long. To get back to my house, I always drive the quick way, but it's not on any main streets. It mainly consists of driving behind stores and through store parking lots, all of which were closed by that hour. I pulled up to my house, put my car in park, and gathered my things. As I was reaching for my handle, I saw a dark-colored Jeep pull up beside me. I rolled down my window and asked the driver if they needed something because they were just staring at me. The guy just blurted out, "You're hot," and then just looked at me with a blank stare. I then replied, how would he know what I looked like before he stopped at my car? It turns out the tall guy had followed me home. This couldn't be by accident because of the weird convoluted way that I drove home. He asked me out and I responded, "No thanks, I live with somebody." Not going to tell him it's my dog, not a partner. He said that he did too, and I firmly told him no yet again, making sure not to smile or laugh or give him any encouragement. Finally, he drove away. I waited a while to make sure that he was really gone and then went inside, thoroughly creeped out. The next morning, I went out to my car to get something out of the trunk. Written in the dust on top of the trunk in giant scroll was a phone number. He'd come back after I went inside to do that, even after I showed zero interest. Quick backstory. I've had a stalker for about 4 years. He was never aggressive or sent me any proper threats. So as stubborn as I am, I did my best to ignore him and not give him the satisfaction of showing him any fear. To be honest, after a while, I also wasn't scared anymore since he almost never came close to me. I know being stalked can affect people severely even in a case like mine, and that's totally valid. But I guess I just got lucky and was never really psychologically affected by it. His stalking behavior mostly just consisted of sending me letters and gifts such as photos of my own apartment building from the outside, things that he dug out of my trash can, and so on. I called the police many times, but they weren't able to catch or identify him. About 3 weeks ago, I discovered the German version of Ask Me Anything on Reddit, and I thought people might want to know what it's like to have a stalker. Since I barely use any social media aside from Reddit and have no personally identifying information here, I didn't think he'd ever see it. One person even asked, "Does he know you're putting him on blast on Reddit?" And I answered, maybe it would make him angry. Maybe he'd be turned on. Don't know, don't care. Well, I know the real answer to that now. He did see it and he did not like it. Like I said, he was never aggressive and never came close to me. The closest I know of was that he sent me a picture of myself unlocking my apartment door taken from the corner of the steps above. Sorry if that makes no sense. I don't know how else to explain it. But I consider myself a pretty vigilant person, and I'm thinking that he might have hid a camera there instead of being there to take the photo himself. I think I would have noticed him if he did. I don't know how he got wind of the AMA, but he did. The next week was quiet. No letters, and I didn't see him anywhere. Then he left me letters with printed out questions and my answers from the AMA. He also left me a long hateful letter towards my boyfriend. His letters were never hateful like that before. though he never seemed happy with my boyfriend. He wrote about how I should share the spotlight with him since I got so much attention thanks to him. A few days later, I got a gift, but this time he didn't leave it in my mailbox or at my car like he usually did. No, this time he left it inside the apartment building right in front of my door. I didn't take it inside my apartment, but opened it outside. It was a pretty big box, which was also unusual, and it was taped shut. As I'm typing it out, I realized that wasn't a good idea at all and could have ended badly for me. But luckily, he didn't send me a bomb or anything. He did, however, send me several zip ties, a roll of tape, a TV remote with most buttons picked off, a pack of Band-Aids with a few used ones. Not actually used, just made to look that way though, according to the police, and then a framed picture of me. I could tell the picture was taken a few days ago, and my boyfriend was next to me but cut out of the photo. The frame was shattered and the package was full of glass shards, clearly more than just what could have fallen out of the frame, and they were also intentionally put inside the crumbled newspaper that was stuffed in there to keep it all in place. I called the police right away and gave it to them. They were more concerned this time, and they told me they'd send patrol cars more frequently. He didn't show up or leave me any letters or gifts for about another week and a half, but 8 days ago it started again. I found letters in my mailbox where he wrote about how he wasted his time on me, how I haven't been appreciating his effort, how he was wrong about me being special. 5 days ago I left my apartment in the morning, and I heard a crunch sound as I stepped on my doormat. He had put a broken glass under it at night. I went off to work because I was in a hurry, and I was just going to make my boyfriend call the police, but then I found my car had also been vandalized. The sides were scratched, lights smashed, and the windshield had a phrase painted on it. "It's about time, miss." I went back inside and called the cops myself. They found the same phrase on the note under the doormat. This time they really took me seriously, which might have been because I was just pissed at this point, which I made very clear. If for some reason you're like me and you're just too stubborn to be afraid of a stalker like mine, then all of this, the letters, gifts, photos, even the damn glass under my doormat, are just really annoying and inconvenient. But my car was useless to me now, and the threat scared me even more. I did, however, have a dash cam in my car, and it caught everything. The police took the footage as evidence, even though the dash cam footage wasn't of high quality, and I'd given them photos of him that were just as good before, but they said that it's not enough. They told me they'll look into it further and promised to send me more patrol cars again. Then it was quiet for 2 more days. Until 2 days ago when someone rang my doorbell at just after 4 a.m. My boyfriend got up, but we were both hesitant, but I saw blue lights outside, and just as I got up, I heard them shouting, "This is the police! Please open the door!" They told us they were called by one of our downstairs neighbors who came home from his night shift about an hour earlier. He had heard someone else enter the building after them before the door fell shut. My neighbors know of my situation, and I've asked them to make sure that they don't let strangers into the building. The neighbor then went into his own apartment and looked through the peephole. We have motion-activated lights in the stairway, so he waited to see if they turned back on. They did. Then he saw a middle-aged man walk upstairs. Above his neighbor are only me and my boyfriend, as well as a single mom with 3 kids who probably won't be getting any visitors at 3 a.m., so he called the police. They came and found my stalker 1/2 floor above me on the stairs. He should have been able to see the cop car since there's a little window up there, and that they had their lights on, but he either missed them or wanted to get caught. They found a pocket knife on him, and he confessed to being my stalker right away. He's finally caught. They got him. It took 4 years, a provocative Reddit post, and one very vigilant and caring neighbor, but he's finally done. For now, at least. He's facing several charges, and I've collected every single piece of evidence over the past 4 years. I don't know what kind of outcome I can expect, but for now I finally got some peace. Update. Today at 9:30 p.m. for the first time in over a year, I took out the trash all by myself in the dark. My boyfriend always did it just to be safe, but today I had nothing to worry about. In the summer of 2017, I was working at a pharmacy. I had been there for 4 years. A new staff pharmacist around my age, 28 at the time, was hired. He seemed odd, but it was nice to meet him because everyone else was rude to him immediately, and I felt bad for him. He asked me way too many questions. Some I answered and others crossed boundaries. Questions about my ex-boyfriends. Fast forward a month and he said he was moving. He lived on the east side of my city, and he said that he was moving to the west side where I live. He said that he actually found a house near the same intersection of where I live. I asked him what street and he wouldn't tell me. He also said that the owner will live there for a few more months, so I forgot all about it. Fast forward a few months later, and my mom and stepdad told me that they met our new neighbor. Our house is one house away from the intersecting street. This house is on the intersecting street, so we're one house away, but the backyards connect. My mom said that he seemed like a really nice young man. The next time I worked with him, I asked if that was him, but he said no. I let it go for a little bit. Then another time, he had started asking me questions, describing my backyard and asking if my street name started with the letter that it did. So he admitted it was him. I asked him how he knew it was my house, and he said that he saw me in the backyard. He decided not to say anything to me. The next few months were weird. I was still friendly with him as a coworker, but he had really crossed some boundaries. He knew that my birthday was coming up, as my birthday and address are in the pharmacy database, and my brother was asking for ideas for what to get me. I wanted a certain phone case, so I was browsing on my phone to send my brother links to the ones I wanted. He would always look over my shoulder whenever I was on my phone. He saw the type of phone case, got me the phone case, as well as a 150 preloaded Visa gift card. I told him in a very professional manner that I felt the gift was inappropriate and probably against company policy. I walked over to his mailbox while he was at work to return it. He kept putting it back in my mailbox with messages of me begging to accept it because I'd make him so happy. I ended up just giving it away. Not much longer after that, I took another coworker of mine to the zoo. I had some of our trip on my Snapchat story. He kept messaging me on Snapchat asking me questions about it, and it was bothering me, so I blocked him. After that, he had actually called my mother. He had got her number from when they first met. He told her that he needed to come over and talk to her, so she invited him in and they talked. I was very alarmed by this, but she thought it was endearing. I told him once again at work that he had crossed boundaries, and he said that he does everything that he does because he cares about me. He didn't understand where I was coming from at all. Those were the most standout things he's done. Also, a lot of pestering about, tell me who your boyfriend is, and trying to look at pictures of my phone to figure it out, going through coworkers' phones and reading their conversations with me, even impersonating them while I was not at work to get info. One time he even cornered me at work, and he wouldn't let me leave until I told him what characteristics I look for in a guy. He was also mad at me when I got a birth control prescription filled, even though it was being used to correct hormonal problems from another birth control. I started being mean to him at work because I just couldn't take it anymore. He then told me that I was only treating him that way because he was a nice guy who cares about me, and that I'm just looking for a jerk. It became a very hostile work environment, and I left about 2 months ago. This is a side note. Other coworkers and neighbors hate him because he likes to start confrontations. He also likes to play he said she said with people just for entertainment. The neighbors have called the police on him and they think he's crazy. I haven't heard from him at all since leaving, but I saw my former coworker last week at a get-together. She said that he's trying to get her to tell him where I work now. He told her that he sees me getting into my car every morning, so he knows that I have a new job. I told my mom this, and she didn't take it very seriously. She never believed that I was in any danger. I would just really like to get an outside perspective. When I come home late, I always run to the door, and if no one's home, I'll wait to take a shower. I'm still really scared. Update. So it's been a few years. Last night I looked out the window and there were multiple police cars and an ambulance. I found out later that my neighbor married a young girl from the same country as him. She doesn't speak much English and doesn't have any family here. She has been here for a few months. My other neighbors managed to catch her outdoors once or twice and managed to get her phone number. She said that he has cameras all over the house and outside. Last night he was beating on her and accusing her of cheating, and the cops were called. After that, he shut off her phone service. Last night he attacked her with a knife, and my neighbors heard her screaming and they called the cops for her. She says he was trying to kill her. She was taken away by an ambulance and he was arrested. Multiple guns and knives were found in the house. Okay, so this is a situation that happened in the Dubai airport, although I wasn't the main victim in this story. I was trying to get to the terminal in order to catch a flight out of Dubai when I realized the taxi driver took me to the wrong terminal. Disappointed at the fact that I was at the wrong place, I let out a "damn it" out of frustration at myself and decided to try and figure out where to go next. A few minutes later, 2 police officers came and detained me and then went off on me for swearing at an Arab woman, whom I assumed was somewhere around me, and a whole host of insults that would only be really offensive in Arab and Asian culture, including threats of violence until they saw I had a passport from a Western country and then suddenly became polite. I don't look like I'm from the West though. However, the worst part of that hour-long ordeal was the fact that there was a Hungarian girl that came in with her dad and complained about being assaulted, only to get yelled at by the police and told to get lost. Is this a common experience in authoritarian countries? What would a woman do if she was really attacked like this? Anyway, I'm really glad that I wasn't that girl at the time. And to the Dubai police, hopefully I don't have to see any of you again.
I was on my way to deliver an order from the sandwich shop I worked for. It was a quiet night, around 11 or so. I had my music playing in my car, and I was just running through the motions of the delivery. On my way to their neighborhood, I pulled up to a red light. There was nobody else at the intersection, but for some reason, the light stayed red for what felt like an abnormal amount of time. As I sat there and stared at the light, waiting for it to change, a car pulled up beside me. I only glanced over for a second, not wanting to make that awkward eye contact, but their windows were heavily tinted, like definitely more than what was legal, as I couldn't see a single thing through them. The car itself was black as well, maybe an old Toyota or something. I can't really pinpoint what it was, but I got a really uneasy feeling about them. It could have just been that we were the only two on the road. I'm really not sure. Eventually the light turned green and I started going. I didn't get very far though before noticing they hadn't moved. They were still parked at the intersection. Once I got further down the road, I shrugged it off and just thought it was weird and nothing else. A couple minutes later, I pulled off into the section of housing that the delivery was in. I'd say neighborhood, but it wasn't really a neighborhood. It was just a line of 10 or so houses leading to a dead end. Something about it seemed really off-putting. Of all the houses on the street, not a single one had a light on. I 100% would have thought these places were abandoned, if not for the fact that the houses themselves looked really nice. They looked like ordinary neighborhood homes, with not a single sign of anything wrong with them. I figured it had to just be a coincidence that every resident down the street had their lights off. Anyway, the address I had was for the second to last house. I pulled up and parked on the curb, getting out with the order and walking up to the door. I was hoping I'd at least see some sort of light coming through the windows of this house because it was the one I was delivering to, but standing on the porch, I didn't see any light. Reluctantly, I knocked on the door. When I did, the door swung a bit from its hinges, like it wasn't properly shut or locked. Now this was even more odd. Sandwich delivery, Anyone home?" It was completely silent. No response, and not even the slightest sound from inside the house. I was gonna leave, but just to be sure I didn't miss anything, I cracked the door open a little further. I could see a hallway and a room. Both were empty of any furniture or decorations, not even a single picture on the wall. It only took a few seconds before dust started coming through the doorway too. I shut it and backed up from the porch. I was very confused and slightly worried. As I walked back down to my car though, I noticed something down the road. A few houses back, there was a small black car that wasn't there when I pulled in. Its headlights were off and it was parked. Once I saw the tinted windows, I immediately recognized it. I felt my face go white, knowing this could not possibly be a coincidence at this point. I started to hurry to my car, but as I got just a few feet away from the road, I saw something move in the reflection of one of the windows. I wasn't sure what it was that I saw, but I stopped in place. I was standing near the passenger door, and through the window, my eyes fell on the back seat. It was dark, but there was something blocking the back window. It only took me about a second for me to realize what I saw. I turned and bolted back to the house. As I did, the back door to my car swung open, and a man in a black hoodie and black pants came running out. He didn't chase me though. He ran straight down to the road and into his car. I stayed on the porch, and with my heart pounding, I dialed 911. I probably could have gotten in my car and left at that point, but I was too scared to really think straight. Police arrived and immediately told me that this whole street was unoccupied, as the homes were new builds. Guess that explains why I thought they looked so nice and not abandoned. What I definitely didn't expect was to hear them say that they've had multiple reports this past week, very similar to mine. The guy would order something for delivery with a fake name and address, then follow the driver. What happened to me was the closest call of any of them though. The guy had snuck inside my car and was waiting for me to get in and maybe even drive away. Who knows what he was trying to do. Unfortunately, there haven't been any updates on finding him. Last winter, I moved to a new home in a new town. I'd only visited the town once for a job interview, and once I got it, I pretty much had to move there. It was a really big step up in my career, so I was really eager for everything to go well. Because the town was kind of in the middle of nowhere though, it made the moving process not so ideal. I had to find a home for rent online and go through the process that way. I know it's not the best way to go about it, but I thought it'd be okay since I'd only be renting for a year and I could always find somewhere else afterward. On December 1st, I packed up everything in my truck and made the drive. I only stopped to fill up the tank along the way, but even then, I didn't make it into town until 9. Like I said, I had been here before when I did the job interview, but I'd never seen the town at night before. It was kind of eerie, as the streetlights were very dim and most of the stores were closed, so all the lights were out. I wasn't used to these smaller towns, so this was very different to me. There wasn't anyone driving around either. It almost felt like I was driving through a ghost town. Another 5 minutes later, I pulled into the neighborhood and up to my new house. It was very small and was in a row next to other similar houses. I parked on the driveway and got my air mattress out, then headed inside. I had sold basically everything before the move, planning to buy new stuff once I got here, so I knew I'd be stuck with an empty home for a while. Inside though, the place was about what I expected. It was old and outdated. The wooden floorboards creaked with every step, and the house had a musty smell to it. The layout was simple though. It was one floor with a kitchen and living room, and one long hallway leading to the 2 bedrooms. After quickly looking around, I turned the lights back off and went into the master bedroom, tossing the air mattress down and turning on the pump to get it full. I sat on the floor, tired from the long drive and the stresses of moving, but as I was sitting there, I heard a creak from the other side of the house. It was just one small creak, but it was very distinct, sounding exactly like one of the floorboards. My initial thought was that it might be a raccoon or something that had taken up shelter in the empty home. So I got up and went down the hallway toward the living room. I didn't even bother walking to the front of the room to turn the lights back on. I just glanced around. The room was just as empty as it was before though. I didn't see any signs of anything. I figured it was nothing. Maybe being tired and stressed made me overthink it. After all, this was a new home, so I wasn't familiar with any of the sounds it may be making. I went back to the bedroom. The mattress was full now, so I tossed a blanket on it and laid down. Tomorrow I had a lot to do, so I wanted to get as much sleep as I could get. Despite the not so great setup, I passed out pretty soon after laying down. When I woke up, I remember opening my eyes and seeing absolute darkness. It looked like I still had my eyes closed. That's how dark it was. I knew it was sometime in the middle of the night, so I closed my eyes again to try and fall back asleep when I heard something from just in front of me. It was one of the floorboards creaking. My eyes shot open again, and I quickly sat up. I stared ahead at where I heard the sound, but still, I couldn't make anything out. I sat there motionless. It was so quiet, I could hear my heart beating as I felt a disturbing sense around me. Then there was another creak. It was further to the left of where the last one was. In my head, I started to panic. Part of me didn't even think this was real, like maybe I was still half asleep or something. Before I could shake the feeling, there were 4 consecutive creaks, each sounding further toward the back of the room. Then there was a moment where I felt like I could see the slightest shape of something in the dark before the bedroom door swung open. The moonlight shining into the hallway immediately illuminated a man as he moved from my bedroom and into the hallway. I heard him sprinting to the other side of the house as I got up and rushed to turn on the lights. By then, the front door was wide open. From the glimpse of him that I got, he looked around 40 years old, with worn clothes and boots. That was about all I could see. I got my phone and keys, then got in my truck and drove away as I called the local police station. From everything I told them, they seemed to think that it was someone living in the house while it was unoccupied, but there's really no way to know for sure what was going on. If that was someone living in the home, it doesn't really explain what they were doing in my room, creeping around while I was asleep. Whatever the case, thankfully the owner let me break the lease and move to a different home. Had I not woken up that night, I don't know what would have happened. This was last year toward the beginning of December. One of my good friends was going on a trip with his family and would be gone for a whole week. He asked if I wanted to house sit his place while they were gone. We were really good family friends, so this wasn't all that unusual. I actually did the same thing for them last year as well. They had a couple fish tanks and a lot of houseplants that they needed me to take care of while they were away, and in return I'd get to stay at their house for a week. I lived in a really small apartment, so I was always glad to take them up on the offer and help out. I headed over a couple hours before they left, just to hang out and get a refresher on everything that I needed to do. Once they left, I unpacked some things and got settled in, and around 6, I went out to pick up some dinner. I brought it back to the house and ate in the living room while watching TV. Only a half hour later, there was a knock at the door. I paused the show and got up, looking to see who it was. It was a man in his 30s. He wasn't wearing a delivery uniform or anything. He just looked like a regular dude. I cracked the door open and asked what he needed. He looked startled to see me, but quickly recovered and asked if my friend was home right now. He called him by his name, so I thought he might have been a friend or something, but I told him he'd have to come back some other time. He didn't ask anything else and just walked away. I probably should have asked what he needed, but I felt like he should have told me to begin with. I was sure it was nothing, but I texted my friend just to let him know who came by. He called me soon after and asked who he was, and after a brief conversation, he said he had no idea who that guy could have been. I kept an eye out for the rest of the day, but still felt like it was probably nothing serious. I watched TV for a while, then went around the house watering the plants and feeding the fish. Around 9, I started getting the couch set up for bed. I tossed a few blankets down and made a little sleeping area. As I did, there was another knock at the door. I walked over, more confused than anything, but was immediately unnerved to see the same guy outside the door. This time, I didn't open it. "Hey, what do you need? Can you come back a different day?" I yelled through the door. I watched as the man listened and stared at the door like he was thinking, but instead of responding, he just walked away again. I made sure the door was locked before going back to the couch. It was then that I definitely should have called the police, but for some reason I really didn't want to. Especially being at someone else's house, I was worried that this was all just a misunderstanding. Not to mention, the guy hadn't actually done anything yet. I would just have to explain that he came by twice and stood at the door. It kind of sounds silly, honestly. It definitely woke me up though, and I didn't feel comfortable going to bed right away. I stayed up on my phone and had the window curtains open so I could see if he walked up again. I probably waited for a good 2 hours before my eyes started getting heavy. I did one last check out the windows before closing the curtains and getting ready for bed. I brushed my teeth, then hopped in the shower to quickly rinse off. By the time I got out, dried off, and went back downstairs, it had been less than 10 minutes. I went around and turned off all the lights, and before getting in bed, I figured I'd do one last check out the windows, just to help me sleep easy. I looked out, seeing nothing but trees swaying in the wind and the empty road in front of the house. I stepped back, and as I went back over to the couch, my eyes drifted toward the front door, catching something off. The lock was sideways. I walked over, thinking I was seeing things wrong, but no, it was unlocked. I was completely certain I'd locked it, not even a doubt in my mind. I froze up for a second before I felt adrenaline surge through me. I turned around and crept over to the couch to grab my phone that I left on the end table, but it wasn't there. Someone had already taken it. I didn't stay a second longer, grabbing my keys and running out the front door. I used the emergency button in my car to call 911 as I pulled out of the driveway and parked further down the road to wait. When police pulled up and searched the home, they found the man, same one that came by twice, sitting in one of the spare bedrooms. When they arrested him, he didn't say a word, like he was completely mute. They found a forged key in his pocket that matched the front door, and nobody knows how he got it. My friend told me again that he had no clue who the man was or why he'd break into his home, but it honestly felt like there was something he wasn't telling me. Suspiciously, we haven't talked much after that either. I don't know what was going to happen that night. If I didn't notice the door was unlocked and went to bed, I really don't think I would have woken up. I had just moved across town into a small home on the outskirts. It was only 20 minutes away from where I lived, but it felt like it was more isolated and away from everything. It had a decent amount of tree-covered land, so I couldn't see any other houses or roads or anything, which made it feel really peaceful. On the day I moved in, though, I got a knock at the door around dinner time. It was an older man, like 50-ish, with long gray hair and sunken eyes. He greeted me, but there was clearly something off about him. He tried to make some small talk, but he was very awkward and had a straight, unamused face the whole time. It was a bit odd. After he left, I didn't think too much on it though. I thought it was probably just a nosy neighbor. But on the following day, while I was unpacking, there was another knock at the door. It was him again. The first thing I noticed was that he was still wearing all the same clothes that he had on yesterday, and he had that same straight face. He asked how everything was coming along, but strangely during our conversation, it felt like he didn't actually have any reason to talk to me. It was like he was dragging on the conversation just because. I had to abruptly end it after a few minutes because he just wouldn't go away. I told him to have a good night and closed the door on him. It was just getting kind of creepy at this point. I mean, I guess it would have been different if he was a really talkative and outgoing person that just wanted to meet his new neighbor, but he wasn't like that at all. He seemed like he didn't even want to talk and was just forcing himself to. I went back to unpacking, trying to forget about it, but he knocked on the door again. This wasn't a friendly knock. It was loud and demanding. I looked down the hallway at the door and could see a shadow behind the curtains that covered the window on the door. "Just leave. I'm sorry, but I have a lot to do tonight," I said, trying to keep my cool, but definitely letting the frustration show. He didn't move. He waited for another few seconds, then knocked again. At that point, I was extremely irritated and marched over to the door, prepared to yell at him. I swung the door open, and the man was standing much closer, only about a foot away from me. His eyes were dead, and his whole face and body was tense. It was like he was contemplating doing something. And that's when I looked down and saw the tip of a knife showing through the sleeve of his jacket. I slammed the door just as he pressed forward. By the time I locked it, he was already banging on the door again. It was almost even more disturbing because he wasn't saying anything anymore either, like he was possessed by whatever he was trying to do. I called the cops and double-checked every door was locked. The man stayed by the front door for several minutes, then hurried away. Cops didn't make it until well after he had left. I gave them my report of the incident, telling them that he was likely one of my neighbors. They found that nobody matching his description lived anywhere near me. None of the other neighbors had ever seen him either. We still don't know who he was, or if he's still wandering around our neighborhood anymore. Why exactly he came up to my house with a knife in his hand is unknown. Hopefully he's gone far away from here though.
When I was 16 years old, I'm a female, I was walking to a store near my house. I was a huge pothead and would walk to the neighborhood nearby to get my stuff and then take a shortcut through said neighborhood to the store to get blunt wraps. I was walking through an abandoned apartment building and a very nice dressed man was walking through and asked how I was doing. I ignored him and just kept walking. In the area that I was walking, there's not really white men in suits, so I was kind of thrown off. I get to the store and I'm walking back, and a white truck is parked in the corner of the apartment building, so I opted to go the long way on the busy street. The truck drove up to me and the same man jumped out and picked me up so fast that I didn't even have time to think. I was only 100 pounds at the time and wasn't nearly as strong as him. I tried to scream and hit him with my elbow, but there was no luck. A lady that's heavily on drugs that always walks around my city came running at us and yelling to put me down. He actually did put me down and then sped off. Almost 10 years later, I always stopped to give the woman food and actually just paid her to get rehab, and I guess now she's doing great, reunited with her grandchildren and working. Not as creepy as some of these other stories here, but definitely never walking alone again after that.
It was a normal night after work, getting home at 10. I was exhausted, but ready to stay up late and game. All my buddies worked early tomorrow, so I was just playing solo and relaxing. A few hours into the night, I heard what sounded like a knock. I took my headphones off and listened for it again, but it was quiet now. I thought surely it had to be a knock at the front door, as it was pretty loud and I didn't know what else it could be. I went over to check it out, but nobody was on the porch. The more I thought about it, a single knock would have been odd if there were someone at the door. I still didn't know what it was that I heard, but I went back to gaming. It must have only been a half hour later that I heard another sound. It was a sort of click, like something closing. I immediately took my headset off and looked behind me. Again, the house was quiet now. I got up and did a walkthrough of the house. I didn't thoroughly check every inch of the place. I was just trying to spot any obvious signs of what I'd been hearing. The house was fairly old, so usually I chalk these things up to being the aging wood. After checking around and not seeing anything, that's exactly what I did, and I went back to my desk. I was still a little hesitant to put my headset back on, but eventually I did anyway. Only a couple minutes later though, a reflection suddenly moved across my computer screen. Maybe it was a shadow, I don't know, but I jumped up and spun around. This time, it was almost like I knew, without a doubt, that someone was inside my home and had just walked somewhere behind me. My desk was in the living room, so there was a long hallway behind it with 3 separate rooms, and at the end was the front door. I took a few seconds to recollect myself and think about which way the reflection moved across my screen, and realized it had moved from the left side of the hallway to the right side. There was only one door on the right, which was to my bedroom. It felt like in that moment, the silence of the whole house was deafening, making each second pass feel more and more terrifying, knowing almost for sure that someone else was in that room. I decided my best bet was to just run for the front door and hope whoever was in the room didn't jump out at me. After a few seconds, I forced myself to move, running down the hall and through the front door. I heard nothing as I fled the house. I called the cops and waited outside for several long minutes. They went in, and I still couldn't believe it when they pulled a man out the front door. I knew someone had broken in, but actually seeing it was really unsettling. He looked around 55, but was very large. His face was uncanny, with wide, bloodshot eyes and a disheveled beard. Even worse, they found 2 knives on him. It seemed he had no particular reason for choosing me as a victim of whatever he was trying to do, which I guess was supposed to make me feel better, but honestly, it didn't. It just means he was completely insane and would have done anything without hesitation had he had the chance to. I think I just got really lucky that night to even be standing here today. I had just graduated college. I didn't have much money, but was looking for a new job now that I had a degree. In the meantime, me and one of my buddies from college, Aaron, decided to rent a home and be roommates. He made a lot more money than I did, and planned on staying at the house after I moved out once I got a better job. The place was actually pretty cheap too, only a couple hundred more than some of the apartments around here, so split between both of us, it was definitely doable. The move-in went well. We each took a bedroom, then went to IKEA for the extra furniture that we needed for the living room. On the first day we arrived though, we got a letter on the door. It was just a note card taped near the door handle that said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." I guess the note's not really that weird in itself, but it had no name or indication of anything. It was just a handwritten line saying, "Welcome to the neighborhood." It almost looked sarcastic. Anyway, a couple days went by as we got settled in before both of our vacation time from work was over and we had to start our normal routines again. I just worked at a pizza shop for the meantime. The first night I got home from work though, I noticed someone standing near our house as I pulled into the driveway. It was a woman. I couldn't see much as it was dark out, but she was just looking at one of our front windows. Once I pulled into the garage and walked back out to ask her what she was doing, she was gone. I thought it was weird, but probably nothing to worry about. She looked harmless enough and clearly didn't want any trouble because she left. Later that night, I mentioned it to Aaron and we both joked about it. Nothing else happened that night. Another week or so went by. By then, we felt pretty comfortable with the place and were just living our lives. This night was normal. I had work until 10, but I knew Aaron got off at 8. Once my shift was over, I drove back home. During that drive though, I got a strange gut feeling. I don't know what it was, but something just felt off. Then I pulled up to the front of the house. The front door was wide open, but all the lights were off in the house. I obviously thought it was really weird, especially since Aaron was supposed to be home right now. I parked and walked up to the door. "Aaron, why is the door open?" I yelled from the porch. The house was silent. I took a few steps inside and looked around, then pulled out my phone and texted Aaron. Immediately when I sent the text, I heard his phone chime down the hall. When I looked, his phone was lighting up on the kitchen counter across the hallway. Now this was extremely strange. There was no way he went anywhere without his phone, and he definitely wouldn't have left the door open if he did. Aaron was always really picky about locking up the place before leaving. I wasn't really sure what to do, but something in me felt like I should check his room first to see if there were any signs I was missing. I went up the stairway and up to his room. The door was